And we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Mecca of Banter podcast. I'm not even going to do my sound effect today because, as you can see, guys, I am drinking wine. My total wine membership has seen a drastic increase with the performance of Chelsea of lately. But I don't want to make this podcast any more depressing than it needs to be. How are we doing, boys? Let's clock in. I'm going to start over here with Hoover. Maybe you can bring a smile or some brightness to this pod.
Hey man, we're having fun. I tell you what, I picked the single worst weekend to go camping without phone service as a Spurs fan before they, 2-1 late stoppage time winners. Yeah, I mean that was maybe the most electric soccer game ever, and I didn't see any of it. But no, it was fantastic. We're flying right now. I'm happy to be here. Let's chat City and everyone else too.
Yeah, obviously Hoover's going to pass it on over to Henry. Henry, maybe.
Yeah.
Check in. My bad. That's my
what's
fault.
up, gentlemen? First off, it's great to see you all after not being able to make last pod, and then the pod before that going into the abyss and not being here. It's great to see all of you, and let me tell you, it is a great week to be a Manchester United fan. Every single week that I think of being a Manchester United fan, I am just eternally grateful that I'm not a Chelsea fan. So it's a great week to be a Manchester United fan. We have a lot to dig into this episode and this week of games. I have some thoughts on United's performance, obviously some thoughts to City as well. And I will give a shout out real quick to Hannah and Anna on my indoor soccer team, as they have now affectionately coined our group chat between the three of us as the Mecca of Slander, with a picture of Jared Stroud as our group photo. So big shout outs to the two of you, and we're here. We're out here.
Yeah, and we will gladly continue to be United's scapegoat for how shit they're performing. But we'll move on from Henry, and why don't you clock in Winks?
What's up, boys? Winks here at LCW21 on Twitter. Another great weekend for us, still undefeated in the Prem. Nothing but smiles over here. Finally beat Everton at Goodison Park for the first time in 6 years, I think it's been, which is crazy in its own. I feel like Everton away has been our kryptonite the last several years, as I mentioned. So happy to finally jump that hurdle, and in a convincing and dominating way. So excited to dive into that, and equally so to see you all on here, as Henry said. So let's get
I know that you said, like, in the group chat that Everton has been your bogey team, but that is an insane stat.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Six years or six times, whatever, that you haven't won at Goodison Park. Like, I think that is beyond, especially for like how bad Everton have been, and like you all have been great the last like 2 seasons, but even years before that, you were at least like competent when they weren't.
We're better on paper to them. Yeah. Something about certain teams away. In the stadium, the atmosphere, we talked about it, and we'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I still remember last year when we played them away. I think it was in February. I was staying at my buddy's house for the Mitre Cup, this indoor tournament that was in town that weekend, and I'm like watching it on my phone, like laying on my buddy's couch where I slept the night before, and just like so painful, but you could hear the crowd chanting even almost louder than the announcers were talking over the microphone. So it's a wild place to play, and yeah, nonetheless excited that we finally jumped that.
Hey, you're still getting 3 points, and that's something I haven't felt in a little bit, so we move. But as you guys said, I'm happy to see all of you, and like Henry said before, we have a jam-packed episode for you guys. We're going to have, of course, our weekly review of the games this weekend. We're going to talk about St. Louis City's performance, and then also talk about the Champions League groups and select who we think is going to advance from those. So, boys, let's dive right into it with our weekly recap. From the weekend, the first game, obviously we don't have any representation from Liverpool. But hey, they score another 3 points. I bet Butchie is pretty happy. They have a 3-1 win over Wolverhampton Wanderers. I don't know if you guys want to go into detail about it. I will say I thought it was interesting Nunez not starting. I think Jota and Gakpo, I find that pretty interesting that everyone's been raving about the performances of Nunez late, and yet he still isn't seeing the starting nod. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. He did come on in the 56. I didn't, of course, get to watch this game that much. But yeah, 3-1 win for Wolves.
I think the only thing that I'll say about it is it feels like after last season, Darwin Nunez, obviously going through the struggles that he went through and the performance, I feel like Klopp is doing what Potter should have done with Havertz and maybe Arteta should do with Havertz this year, where obviously there was a player really struggling for form. And I mean, actually, I'll give a shout out to Big Ange as well with Richarlison. We can talk about that too. But I think that Darwin Nunez, I agree. When he wasn't starting games early in the season, I was that's a little odd. But I think he's honestly just protecting him a little bit, getting the monkey off his back, and letting him score goals and do it from the bench, so that when he gets his full 90s, he'll be confident in front of goal again. So I don't know. Maybe that's something to Klopp's credit that he's been doing it longer, obviously, than Potter has, or longer than Arteta has. Maybe that's just something up his sleeve that he says after a year of performing the way he did, maybe we bring him off the bench so he gives me a reason not to. So I don't know. I think that's the one thing I can say about them.
Yeah, I agree. And to be fair, we don't have to touch on them that much at all because we don't have any representation for them. So we can just move on right past them. They had a win. Who cares? Alrighty. The next scoreline I do want to bring up, and boy, does it feel good to say. It is 3 Brighton, 1 Manchester United. Henry, I'm shocked you don't have a glass of wine next to you as well. How are we feeling after that result?
Dude, I mean, so Brighton, they're good, bro. They're really
Gilmore.
Good. Yeah, the truth. We got honestly, it was a really embarrassing loss, to be honest with you. The first 20 minutes, I mean, I don't know if you all even watched the game, but the first 20 minutes, we looked really good, to be honest. We were electric. Some of our possessions, going forward, had beautiful back to front, moves. Rashford took a couple of guys on in the first 20 minutes that you were whoa, those are the 5-star skills. That's what that is. Just really, really doing it. Hoyland looked electric. I mean, first 20 minutes, I was damn. I think I even texted Dobes during the first 20 minutes, being okay, we showed up. This is sick. And Brighton honestly looked like they didn't know what hit them. And then that was as good as it got. It got significantly worse throughout the game. We got outplayed in every aspect of the game. That ends our, I don't know, I think it's 30 something matches unbeaten at home. That ends that streak, which is unfortunate. But some of the more concerning things that we saw was overall, it seemed like there was a really big lack of effort from a lot of the guys. And I'll be the first one. Obviously, you all know how much I love Marcus Rashford and how much I talk about him ad nauseum. I'm sure you all have seen the 2-minute compilation of all of Rashford's lack of pressing during the game. We were here literally a year ago. We were sitting on this podcast talking about how Ronaldo needed to get out of the club because he doesn't have the legs for a Ten Hag system. He's not pressing. He's not doing his job defensively. And then you see a 10-year younger Marcus Rashford not doing it. It's just really frustrating to see that. And, Messi gets a pass because Messi's Messi. But if you're not doing what Messi does on the offensive side of the ball, you're not that guy to where you just can't be working hard. And I just can't quite figure out why Ten Hag just gives Rashford a pass to not press, to not work defensively. There were so many times that we could have turned the ball over if they just did something a little bit more than what they did. So that was embarrassing. That was a really embarrassing display. And obviously the Mecca has been blowing up about Manchester United's performance, and we've gotten some wild takes from some of the guys. But there was something good that came out of the week. 2 things. One, Hoyland got pulled off in about the 60th minute, and all of Old Trafford booed, meaning they don't want that guy off the field. Like, it has been so long since we've had a striker that like the fans are way behind. And granted, he's played 2 games, or I think in total he's played like 80 minutes. But they booed Ten Hag's decision to take him off the field, which shows that there's like backing up a striker. And then second thing,
wasn't he injured? Like
no.
He
like
wasn't prior. Yeah. I thought 70 minutes or 65 minutes. Like, I mean, I understand being upset of him coming off the field, but
sure,
you got to think of the future there.
Yeah, and that might be what it was. Like, I don't know if Ten Hag's come out and said something about it, but like, you have to think, just like you said, that was probably what it was. So that was number one. Number two is all of Brighton's content over the last like 2 days. It has been, if you haven't like looked up Brighton's Twitter account, it's been fucking outrageous, like what they've done, because they can. And so I think that that's great for the internet, and hurts just a little bit when I look at it. So it wasn't good, and I want to say that Bayern Munich's going to be better midweek, but I don't know. Wan-Bissaka's apparently hurt for weeks, and that joins our injury list, and we're out here.
I really honestly only have one question for you, and it really pains me that Dobes isn't here to answer it as well. But when is panic mode for you guys?
There's some context here. Dobes asked the same question to Nick. What, week 1?
Yeah. So this is where I think this is where we differ. My panic mode, truthfully, has nothing to do with Ten Hag at all. Like, my panic mode is the same panic mode that I had, last season, which is the Glazers, the ownership. So about a year ago, maybe 11 months ago, they came out and said that Manchester United is up for sale. We're going to get new ownership. And if you are, aware of the Manchester United fan base, that's what we've wanted for years and years and years and years. We've wanted the Glazers out of the club. They've like bled the club dry. They're the worst owners in sports. They're such bad owners that the Premier League made a rule to not do what the Glazers did when buying a club. Like, that is how horrendously they have owned the club. And so Ten Hag, over the last couple transfer windows, has gone out and said, hey, these are my top 3 targets of the window. They haven't signed a single one, not a single one. So they've spent a ton of money on players that might have been his second or third choice, but not the guys that he's wanted. So he hasn't really been backed at all. I think Ten Hag signed a 3-year deal going into last year. So, he's on year 2 of his 3-year deal. I genuinely feel that if the club's not sold by the summer, I think that next year he'll just walk away from the club. I think that he won't sign any extensions. He won't do anything. And therein lies the problem over the last several managers. Not saying that the solve was Mourinho or the solve was Van Gaal or the solve was Solskjaer. That wasn't it. But we see the same pattern as a manager comes in year 1, gets a result, and they get backed in their first transfer window. And then in the second window, they don't get any backing whatsoever. And then they get sacked. It's just how the cycle goes at Manchester United. So my panic mode has nothing to do with Ten Hag. I can rationalize looking at the signings in, the lack of signings out, the lack of signings in. There's this statistic that over half of the signings that Ten Hag has made in his tenure have either been loans or free transfers because the Glazers won't get the people that he wants. And so my panic mode has nothing to do with Ten Hag. It has everything to do with the Glazers. And if we get towards the end of the season, and regardless of where we are in the table, if the Glazers are having no sign of leaving, that's when I will be okay, we might have one more year of Ten Hag, and then we're just going to get the next person, and the next thing's going to happen. It's it's really dark days when you think about the Glazer ownership.
I know a couple owners that sound kind of like that. I think I've heard this story before.
I was gonna say,
dude, the thing, it's okay, you're right, and I think I agree with you on the Ten Hag thing, and I think that's not someone you want to lose, and I see him as a good manager. But at some point, we can rationalize, and we've talked about transfers, and we talked how this goes. But there's got to be a right here, right now attitude towards playing the game in the league every week. Totally. And having Champions League. And I didn't watch the full game, and I saw the highlights, but dude, McTominay not tracking on the
What's
first
the
goal,
starting lineup?
and like some of these guys, and I don't know tactically where you want to get started with that, but I think there's got to be some sort of like pressure on the players to do something too, and that has to come from the manager.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. Like, I want that. I want that pressure on the players to go and perform. And like, I was texting Dubs today. I was like, I don't want to get into a Nick Hayflinger soapbox of how injury prone our team is right now. But like, we genuinely we do have some injuries, and like it keeps happening. So like McTominay playing that like hybrid right midfield, right wing position on Saturday, like never in a million years does that make any sense. But quite genuinely, our players are either injured or getting arrested. So like we don't have this like depth of people coming in. Like you even think about like our signings that we made going into this season. Like Amrabat injured, Hoyland was injured for those like first couple of games, Mount's injured already. Like there's just areas of the field where it's like we just haven't really even seen like our full team and our full potential. So like I would love to say that like you're spot on of like I want that pressure on the players, but like right now they're like, okay, so like what are you going to do? Put in like a U17 player like in my position?
Yeah.
Like quite genuinely, we don't have the competition in the squad to like do that. And I think again, like I'm not even trying to like divert attention, but that goes back to like lack of investment, lack of backing, and like lack of depth in the team. So like
you guys did put in a 17-year-old, to be fair, and he did score. So like
exactly.
That was
so, like,
sick. That was a great goal.
You look at like I look at like Arteta, and when he came in a couple of years ago, like, and of course we saw the finishes in the table, like eighth, fifth, and then finished second. But like when Arteta came in, there's two players on that Arsenal squad from when Arteta came in, like only two. And so like the clear out that has happened in Arsenal over the last couple of years, same thing when Pep came in, there's like very few, if any at all, players that have been left from that like takeover. It is a process. My concern is where like the process is not happening behind closed doors of like our transfer business, our exits, our incomings. So like regardless of what we see on the field, we're capped at like what we do in the transfer market, and specifically what we don't do in the transfer market. So like I agree with you, Hoove. I want pressure on the players too. Like I'm sitting there on my couch being like, for the love of God, just like, yeah, throw Hannibal out there. I don't think that he's like Manchester United quality, but at least he'll go fucking tackle someone and we'll pull up from 25 yards and just shoot an outrageous shot.
Yeah,
like
that was ridiculous.
Give me something. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I feel at the moment.
My only other point here is that we have to talk about Brighton and De Zerbi, because they balled.
with their backup 11.
With like genuinely nobody out. I mean, Matoma, a couple of those guys. Tyreek Lamptey had a great game, but like that Pascal Gross goal, the second goal was actually insane. It's being circulated on, football tactics Twitter for the how the buildup went, and it was like surgical. And there's for sure a couple parts where you can see that a United player probably should have pressed, but there it was surgical. It was so good. I love watching Brighton play. I repeat how much I love De Zerbi. And I think I agree. JP said something in the chat today that was like, I hope he stays at Brighton. I would love to see them play high-level football for an extended period of time and continue to run a club with this recruitment that they've done. Like Ten Hag had some BS interview or BS, quote after, and I think he was just not thinking the correct way. But like the amount of money that Brighton spent on the 11 that beat United was £16 million.
Yeah.
They were all free loans or like 2 million transfer. So it's just insane that what they keep doing, and sometimes they get thumped, which I find to be random. But I hope they continue. And if it wasn't for how your guys' performance looked, you'd say, look, Brighton's great. Like there's no way around it. You move on. But I think it was a two-sided coin for sure.
Yeah, that's fair. It's all fair.
Sounds like such a great week to be a United fan, as Henry said in the beginning of the podcast. Moving on to some.
It's a great week to be a Manchester United for. It's Monday and it's not Saturday. That's all I'm saying.
I'm taking the
Absolutely.
Bayern money line. I don't know what that is going to be. I'm just letting you know that.
It's in the past, but moving on to someone who actually did get 3 points this weekend. Tottenham Hotspurs 2, Sheffield United 1. Hoover, I know you said that you were cell serviceless while you were camping, but boy, did you miss an exciting thriller as we had 2 goals in extra time in the 98th and the 100th minute of this game for Tottenham to come back with a 2-1 thriller. Let's get your thoughts on it.
The vibes are high for sure. We're Vibes FC right now. I don't even know really where to start. It's against Sheffield. I keep, every week I like to throw that out early and just say it's not been the craziest stretch of run of games here. Nonetheless, Sheffield
3 points
played
is 3 points. Hoover.
3 points is 3 points, and Sheffield played the shit out of a championship level quality match, and they did it really well, to be fair.
Yeah.
So they were happy going home 0-0. They got a goal on a bounced throw in off a head ball. To be fair, really nice finish in the 78th. I am a huge proponent of the throw in set piece. I don't know why you don't get the ball as close to the box as you can every time, but that's how they play. That's fine. And then it was a time suck fest. Hence the 12 minutes of added time. So the ref wasn't great. There were a lot of factors I think slided against coming out of there with 3 points, but at the end of the day, dude, you saw the opposite of United performance, and no slight, but just like it hit a point when they're like, we gotta go, like we have to go, we have to go, we have to go. There was urgency. They didn't overplay. They didn't play themselves out of the game. They weren't making rash decisions. They were just playing their game, and it resulted in a Richie header that was just like genuine redemption, like genuine redemption. You want to sign yourself back up for the starting 11. You just get your head on the box in corners, like that's what it is, and he does that really well. So that was electric. They played through matters, and to be fair, Højbjerg has been a serviceable player off the bench in the last few matches, and he slipped another pass to matters, and he found Richie, and Richie found Kulusevski in the middle, and it was a beautiful little build up, and Kulusevski put it away. But I don't even know what else there is to say. Like, I think Christian Romero is incredible. He has 1 foul this year, I think, is what I saw. I may be completely making that up, but he seems like he's kind of backed off of being the savage defender that he's kind of known to be, and way more aware of the game and position and where he needs to play. So that's something super cool to see, that his growth is coming in, and I think he's going to be a top player. But Ange is the focal point. He comes off.
You gotta talk about Ange, bro.
He comes off the field and not even to start with his conversation about mental health in the pregame presser before the game even started. Richie had, media in Brazil basically confirmed that he'd had personal issues in his personal life outside of football. Could have been contributing to his play and, how his performances had been. And Ange had just the most real adult man, not football manager of Tottenham Hotspur. It was a Ted Lasso-esque moment to me. Like he said, he just, drops the football thing. He's like, we're people too. He's like, you have to think about like where some of these kids come from. He always talks about, he's like, at some point, I'm just a guider of young men. It feels like the best college coach or the best high school coach you ever had. Like that's what he's doing. And I think that's working for the group of guys that he has in the locker room right now. And it's 100% reflected on the field. So he's just a godsend in my eyes, and not the high profile manager that we thought we might get. But the way that he fits with Sonny as the captain, I'm like gushing over here. The guy's just genuinely a really good dude. And I think a lot of people outside of Tottenham are even like, I like watching this guy. I like hearing him. He's, good. He's funny. He's real. He's kind of just a human. Yeah, it's insane. I'm obsessed with it.
Tottenham are turning into like must watch football week in and week out. And like to your point, it's like the style of play, it's the fight, and it's also the pre and post match. Like it's been a while since I've like really been tuned into like another team's like pre match, post match. Like I mean, like I send you TikToks all the time of like stuff that I see of Ange talking, and I'm like, dude, like that is the guy. Like I think a Ted Lasso moment's like a really great way of describing it, but like I care so much about like people outside of the game.
Yeah, yeah.
He's just out there on the world's biggest stage being like, yeah, let's set the football thing aside and let's just talk. I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's hard not to like guys like that. Like we have this conversation, and there's a photo at London Fashion Week with Son next to Saka. And I truthfully, there's a lot of people that are like, football's gone soft. Like, no, they're getting paid exorbitant amount of money to be there. They might as well be cordial. And like, I thought that was nice. That
it is kind of weird 1 week before North London derby.
For sure thought that was odd, and it definitely was just a situational thing.
It is cool because like you said, they're two of the most likable guys in the game right now, or in the Premier League at least.
You could tell how awkward they look next to each other too, to be fair.
Yeah, to be fair, I couldn't agree more with Henry. I think Spurs are must-watch football right now. I think Ange is kind of your focal point, like you were saying, Hoove. The other team that I wanted to mention that got 3 points this weekend was Manchester City. They had a 3-1 win over
Lucas
over West Ham. Yeah, calm yourself there, man. Haaland scored another goal. I thought it was interesting. I was like looking up and I was expecting to see that he had 3 goals this game, but no, he only had 1. Oh man, pity him with only 1 goal. Besides
not gonna win the Ballon d'Or though.
Yeah, you don't have to get into that now. But besides that, Newcastle with the 1-0 win over Brentford, and then obviously the other game on Sunday was Chelsea versus Bournemouth. A 0-0 draw. I told you, Winks, I was going in order. I'm confused why you're confused. 0-0 draw. No point or 1 point for Chelsea Blues. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I watched maybe 80 minutes of this game and immediately turned it off because I was bored. Right now, the style of play that we're playing is not fun to watch. I sound like a broken record at this point.
Yeah, you do.
And I think I'm hoping we don't get relegated. And I don't know if you guys had any questions or anything you wanted to ask about Chelsea, but that's all I really had.
I mean, Pochettino.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, one thing. You can go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I want to talk so much shit on Chelsea, and they got exactly 1 more point than Manchester United this week. So I can't really say too much. But one, Raheem Sterling looks like the truth. We said it last pod, but like, dude, like,
he looks like the truth in our boring system that we play.
But the thing is like first half, that man is turning, taking guys on. He's driving to the goal line. He's doing stuff. Like, it's just not fully coming together. But, so I'll give flowers there. Showers to the attacking third. I don't know what it is, but like, you all have some movements of play in your defensive third, in the middle third, that I'm like, world class. Like, times that I'm convinced that Enzo Fernandez is the best midfielder in the league, and I'm like, good for him, he's doing it. And then you all like cross the offensive third threshold, and it's like you just
everything slows down.
It's just like you forget how to play the game. Like there's there's one moment of the game where like Conor Gallagher had the opportunity to like lay it off and just like a simple like 3 to 5 yard pass or whatever, and just plays the ball behind the guy and just like can't connect a simple pass in the final third. So like, I actually don't have any questions. I feel like we have talked about this ad nauseum already this season and last season, but like, I mean, for the sake of you all, I hope that Nkunku coming back whenever he does changes the attack a little bit, because in the preseason you all were balling. So yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, Mudryk thought he did not look good at all.
Terrible.
Yeah, I think he literally looked like there was moments where he literally turned the ball over with no one around him, and he reminded me of Stroud. So that's never a great feeling at all for $100 million signing. I will say the only thing that I'm hoping is that we actually let Pochettino have a little bit of time. Obviously, that is something that Chelsea has not done in the past 2 years with our 5 different managers. So I'm actually hoping that we don't just fall in a vicious cycle of hiring.
That's another gross statistic.
Yeah, I read that statistic that Tuchel was fired, was it 2 years ago or last year, a couple of weeks ago? And he said there's been 4 managers since Tuchel.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Dude, yeah, you're right. He and Conte had that little handshake, and then it was over.
Yeah, and
it was literally a year ago.
Exactly. Yeah. So like I'm hoping that we yes, it's not good right now. Like no way am I happy, but like I'm not saying that Poach is the guy, but like give him time to prove himself that he is the guy. We have a bunch of youngsters. I hate that I said this earlier in literally the Mecca group message. I think we have a bunch of young guys with a lot of money price tags on their head, and they're having to perform now, and there's a lot of pressure, and it's getting to them. I'm gonna be honest. You can see. I think they don't know what to do in the attacking third. They're kind of looking at each other to do something. So yeah, I don't really want to talk Chelsea much more besides that. All right. Winks, we can finally talk about your 1-0 Arsenal victory over Everton. As we alluded before, obviously Everton has had your number for the past couple of years. So I bet these 3 points felt pretty good. What were your takes on the game?
It did, man. And as Henry kind of said earlier, like Everton's not good. So it's weird that like beating a team that isn't good feels this good. But like I said earlier, knowing the history between our clubs the last 6 years, it felt especially good. And I think was exactly what we needed in terms of, again, jumping this hurdle heading into such a big week with PSV on Wednesday and then the North London Derby on Sunday. Sunday we dominated though, and similarly to how Henry said, Brighton dominated every aspect of that game. We dominated every aspect of ours. Very glad Arteta started Vieira in the midfield this game. I thought he played well, and hopefully he mentioned it a little bit or got asked about it a little bit in his post-game interview, but hopefully this is a look into Kai playing a similar role to what Darwin is doing at Liverpool, and Arteta just kind of easing him into the team rather than dropping him in the starting 11 and expecting him to excel, because watching him at Chelsea the last couple of years, we know that that's just not who he is. Vieira did miss a few good opportunities, though. He missed frame, and that was very Kai-esque, but he was in better positions, and a few of his shots that would have gone on net were blocked by defenders. So I think overall an upgrade from what we've seen Kai recently in that position. And he just looks more comfortable too in that role on the left in the midfield. So that was a positive. Martinelli had a goal taken back. I don't know if you guys did you guys watch any of the Arsenal game?
Nope.
Okay, that's all right.
No.
There was one like deflection ball off of one of our players that went kind of like in between the two Everton center backs, and Nketiah came from being like less than a foot off sides, headed it back to our midfielder who sent Martinelli through, and he scored. That goal got called back. And then another goal of ours that didn't get called. Again, we still don't know what a handball is in this league or in any league.
Yeah, that's true.
But I don't know if you guys saw that highlight either, but Zinchenko took a shot from outside the 18 and it hit Tarkowski in like the forearm, and it didn't get called after getting looked at in VAR. And in my opinion, it was the right call. I just still, like, if I was a VAR official or if I was a ref and saw how his arm was placed against his body, I wouldn't have called it a handball either. But it's unfortunate in a similar way, because we've seen, worse calls get called a penalty. So I'm not gonna like bitch anymore about that because I agree with what the call was. I just still think it's unfortunate at the lack of the game's ability to provide a full understanding for what a handball is and what's not.
That first goal was suspect too, wasn't it? I truthfully didn't see a ton of it, but I saw some discourse on Twitter.
It was literally Nketiah was like late, well, not late tracking back because the ball was being played pretty stagnantly in the midfield, and then it just took like a weird bounce off of an attempted like clearance or through ball or something, and just got bounced like right to him. And so he tried to get onside, and like the offside line was literally like less than a foot. It was like his back foot that was like dragging, or like as he was taking a step, it was like less than a foot. So again, I'm not going to bitch about that because that was also kind of a if he would have been onside, it would have been a very lucky deflection in our favor. That was just kind of like an up back through ball, and it was a great finish for Martinelli, but unfortunate there too. So very easily could have been 3-0, maybe even more if we had scored those 2 goals earlier in the game and had a bit more momentum. But unfortunately, Martinelli went down with a muscle injury, and he'll be out on Wednesday against PSV. Everything I've read today doesn't say anything about him missing Sunday, which will be good because I think that he's a super important piece to our squad going forward. Him and Saka on the wings, but we broke the curse with Arteta's bargain buy in Leandro Trossard scoring in the 85th minute off the post and in with his left foot. It was I don't know if you guys saw that either.
I saw that. It was a great finish. He's a player, dude.
And incredible finish, but what a sequence of passes. I think it was like 6-pass sequence off of a short corner kick and just breaking lines, and then Saka kind of does like a cutback cross to him, and Trossard takes it off the bounce with his left foot off the ground and put it post in. So that was nice. That was great. But Jordan Pickford also had a great game, so I don't want to knock anything. I thought that outside of Jordan Pickford, it could have been a lot worse. But I don't think Everton looked particularly dangerous on goal at any point for me. Their shots on goals weren't really threatening, but Raya looked very calm all the way around. A pretty easy clean sheet for his debut, but did really well with his feet, which was a positive for me. Looked really calm, and so I could definitely see him, as much as I didn't want to say, because I didn't think, if we had brought in a keeper prior to Raya, I wasn't ever predicting it would be somebody that would be taking his spot, but I could really see him eventually at some point in the season taking that starting role. And yeah.
Interesting.
I see that Arteta came out and said like something to the extent of like keepers don't really get substituted for anything other than injuries, but he's like debating playing with the idea of making like a goalkeeper substitution because different games call for different strategies and different things. Like different people are good at different things, i.e. what you just mentioned. Like David Raya is like very good with his feet, and if like a team is letting Arsenal have all the possession and we need to play a couple of, like long balls or whatever, he might make a substitution for Ramsdale in the middle of the game, which I think would be
electric, and I think would also change the game a lot. Like I think that if he,
I don't think it would at all.
You don't think that other teams would consider doing that?
No,
I don't know, man.
No, I don't know.
I
think it's wild.
I think teams will continue to like buy goalkeepers like Raya that can play with their feet, but they will be the starting goalkeeper. Yes. And then like in a couple,
we're not going to waste the sub.
They're not going to waste.
It's an irresponsible use of substitutions.
Yeah, and so like for sure he can try that. And I thought it was a super interesting take because I was like, that is literally something I've never thought about before. But like I saw some like Arsenal discourse on our fucking timeline of people being like, Arteta is going to change the future of football, and I was like, he's not. Like he's just
sounded like JP.
I'm gonna say it's an Arsenal fan there.
We don't need to stay on this any too much longer, but I find Arteta to be not super likable. Personally, that may just be me. I find he's like the Ange antithesis. Like he's like we play this style of game and we break the team down, and Ange is like, I don't know, mate. Yeah, we'll find out, won't we?
But does that make him not likable if he's got a plan and isn't just like, yeah, fuck it, we'll just go play?
I don't know. I've taken a whole different approach to how I view football because of this Ange
that's
guy.
fair.
So,
Dude, it's like you went to Jamaica.
You're a new man.
And,
I was gonna
now
say.
everything is just
like,
chill and nice and
I don't
easy.
know.
Like,
I don't
He
know,
went on
man.
ayahuasca and has now seen the light.
yeah, literally.
Ayahuasca advocate over here.
He
But
sees
no,
the world, brother.
no, I don't think Arteta's a bad manager. I think he's great. Whatever they've done really well. He's definitely transformed it. But like, I don't know, just some of the things he says in interviews, the way he presents himself. In the dressing room, things got to be different. But his just, I don't know. That's maybe just me, and maybe that's personal bias. But who knows?
Has nothing to do with the game on Sunday, but fuck that guy.
No, not even worried.
I was going to say that wraps up our weekly recap of this past week's games. But as Henry alluded to, the upcoming game this weekend is the North London Derby, Arsenal versus Tottenham. So that'll be a good one. Moving on to the next part of the podcast where we talk about a team that we all can agree on, finally, St. Louis City. They were in Houston this weekend and they had a 1-1 draw. I will say one thing, and I'll start it off as this. I'll only say it once. We saw Stroud in the starting lineup, which greatly pissed me off. I watched him make 5 backward passes and stop 3 of our own counterattacks. I will say one thing. He was then subbed. So Carnell is finally...
Thank God.
He listened to the pod last week.
One of the earliest he's ever been subbed after starting, too.
Carnell was definitely listening to the Mecca.
Yeah.
But he was finally subbed. And guess what? We scored a goal.
Huh.
It's crazy how that happens.
Yeah, so obviously want to get your boys' take on what was a 1-1 draw to Houston.
My overall take is I have 2 thoughts. Number 1, Parker can't play next to Nilsson. I shit you not, and this is gonna sound so fucking annoying of me, but like I was in the middle. I was watching it with Paige and 2 of our friends. I was in the middle of explaining to them why Parker and Nilsson can't play together. One of the reasons is Parker's not a right-sided center back; he's a left-sided center back. The other reason is because like Nilsson defends like a European defends, and Parker doesn't know what he's doing. So like I was literally in the middle of explaining this, and when they got that break going into our half, and I saw Nilsson start to move, I was like, okay, so literally right here, watch what this happens. Nilsson slides over to like help our left back, like shield the guy. Parker's in no man's land, and they play a 1-2 around Parker, and Parker doesn't even move. I was in the middle of explaining this right when they scored the goal, and I was like, dude, this is like bare basics of defending 101. It's ridiculous. So that's number 1. Number 2, and the part that's actually a little bit more concerning to me, we can like sit here and we can still be like, hey, like we're feeling good. We're still top of like our conference and that feels nice. Our regression since like the All-Star break has been horrendous. And I think that's being masked a little bit because we still see the number 1 attached to our name. But like we are losing momentum at a rapid pace going into the most important part of the season.
We need to peak at the right time.
We have, on a completely different side of the table, we have Inter Miami, who seems to continually just getting better and better. Of course, they suffered their first loss today or this weekend, but like we have not picked up good points. We've lost terrible points over the last several games. So I feel like we could very well be a team that goes into the playoffs ranked number 1 for our conference and get bounced first round because we don't have the momentum where we need it. So my huge nervousness is that we're regressing incredibly fast, and it's not going to take much for us to get found out, and I'm worried about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I like 100% agree, and I didn't get to watch a ton of this game, obviously, but it's definitely a momentum thing, like you said, but it's none of it's consistent. It's been since the league's break, and we've not really figured out the way and, taken the good notes from the good games and reverted them to how we want to, continue to play. And I worry that Carnell overthinks sometimes. I think that's what I get nervous of. And I think he overthinks matchups, and I think he overthinks, games outside of the game that they're playing that week. And that is makes me super nervous because you're right. You just want to be firing at all cylinders towards the end, finish on a high. We have to win our last 3 home games, and the next one is this Wednesday against LAFC, who's second and good. So I'm afraid that if we get exposed on Wednesday, we could be on a slide.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm nervous as well.
Yeah, I alluded to, the Mecca of slander earlier, and I asked them for their thoughts on St. Louis City right now. And like their overall thought is like they're just bored. Like they're bored with the team. Like we're just not doing really any of what we used to do. And granted, you could chalk that up to, again, teams figuring us out, and we're just not as dynamic as we were when we first entered the league. But like it's a boring watch. The last couple of games have been boring to watch, which is obviously not great. So a little bit of nervousness over here from the St. Louis lads.
Absolutely. And we don't have to harp on it too much. We're hoping that we can find form and provide a better performance on Wednesday. But we are going to move right into our 10-minute/5-minute segment on the Mecca of Banter podcast, where we are going to go through the Champions League groups. We, of course, have 6 of us in the Mecca of Banter podcast. So we already went through and picked who we think is going to advance between all these groups. So I just want Winks to take it over. He can go through those groups and we can talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So Champions League starts this week. Group A, in order, not of how we picked to finish, but Group A, we've got Bayern Munich, Manchester United, Copenhagen, and Galatasaray. And after we had talked last, we decided that Bayern Munich were going to win the group pretty well. United at the time were going to get second in the group and move on, and then Galatasaray would go to Europa League. I'm assuming we're also on the same page there. I don't think there's any way Copenhagen.
Copenhagen. I'm not worried about Copenhagen. I'm worried about Galatasaray.
We'll stick with the dogs for now, but
the dogs.
But you got to go to Turkey.
Great.
You got to go to them down there.
I don't know. We'll see what happens there, but
I'll speak. I'm confident. I still think that United's going to pull it through.
I still think you guys will too.
I think the quality's there. Amrabat's coming back. We have Manu coming back soon. Like Mount's coming back soon. Braun's back soon. I think we'll get it done.
I'm very interested for your game against Bayern, though.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be slacking.
Yep.
Nonetheless, Group B, Sevilla, Arsenal, PSV, and Lens. We picked Arsenal to win the group, Sevilla to finish second, and PSV to go to Europa League. But I do remember per our conversation that we were very iffy on Sevilla, or I think we were split decision between Sevilla and PSV.
Mm-hmm. I think PSV could do it. I watched I watched actually their away and home legs against Rangers to get in, and I think they're pretty impressive.
Yeah. I think that head-to-head match is going to be one of the better mid-table or mid-group matchups across the board here. Sergio Ramos going to Sevilla, and then I know that we've got a bunch of studs on PSV as well, so I think that'll be a barn burner of a game. So we'll see what happens there. But
I will say I'm also really interested to see the lineups that Arsenal comes out with the Champions League. I feel like depth is really interesting, and I know your lineups could be pretty different than normal when it comes to Champions League and Premier League. So I'm seeing how Arteta does. I'm not saying that's in a bad way.
And it could, but I think hopefully it's different because this is Champions League and not Europa League.
Like Jorginho's going to have to probably start playing. Kai's going to have to start playing a little bit more.
Secret agents.
Yeah, I mean with Partey still being out, who knows what happens there. But I like the lineup that we played on Sunday and would be happy if we started that way. But obviously with Trossard starting on the left in Martinelli's spot. Group C though, Real Madrid, Napoli, Braga, and Union Berlin. We had Madrid and Napoli at the top of the group and Union Berlin going to Europa League. However, I also remember in this group, a lot of us really wanted Union Berlin to make it on, to move on, because they've been so fun to watch the last year. I guess we'll see what happens there. but
The only thing I wanted to say about this group is Real Madrid. Watching Jude play right now is so fun.
You mean the truth, the absolute truth?
Yeah. Like, he's
the man, and I'm so sad he's at Real Madrid.
He's insane.
Yeah,
nails. But Group D: Inter Milan, Benfica, Salzburg, and Real Sociedad. I think this is a pretty solid group all the way around, to be fair. But we selected Inter to move on at the top of the group, Benfica to move on as well, and Real Sociedad to go to Europa League.
Yeah, similar to what you were saying. Oh, sorry, Hoove.
No, you're good. This one's tight. Real Sociedad's not messing around right now. Benfica are always they're like the last team that you want to play, to be honest, away. And Salzburg always shows up and scores goals. They're super fun to watch. But I think the order that you read there is pretty fair. But we shall see.
Yeah, and to be fair, by no means do I think any of these teams are gonna win the Champions League. But I think this group, talent or level wise, is very similar. So I think we're gonna be in for a lot of electric games.
Yeah.
And I think this could be a good group to watch.
Forgot to mention we get to watch Brendan Aronson play in the Champions League.
Yeah, bro.
Too. So that's super fun. Would love to see them do well.
Yeah, big shouts.
All right, Group E, we have Atletico Madrid, Feyenoord. Did I even pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Close.
Feyenoord,
Close enough.
Lazio, and Celtic. We had Atletico and Feyenoord moving on, and Lazio going to Europa League. I know that there was a little back and forth discussion here between Feyenoord and Lazio on who was going to move on and who was going to Europa. And I think at the time I was one of the couple that said Lazio, but I don't know. Do you guys still feel good about that choice?
Yeah.
It'll be close, but
it will be close.
I'm fine with it.
It'll be another one of those ones that we just mentioned that I think they're all going to be.
Yeah, why some of these groups suck.
Yeah.
It's weird. I feel like there's two, looking at the graph here, it looks like there's two groups, in my opinion, that have maybe three. Maybe it's more than I thought, but 2 to 3 groups that are not good and have a clear outlier. One that's just, we'll talk about it here in a second, the group of death, but the other 3 I feel like or the other 4 are very well
Balanced.
Well balanced all the way around, yeah. But leading into the group of death, Group F, we have PSG, Borussia Dortmund, Milan, and Newcastle.
This was one that we argued hard on because
we really did.
I don't think PSG's going through, and that is a real bold take.
Yeah, I mean we all had Milan, AC Milan, with our boy CP leading the way and finishing at the top of the group, and then we were between PSG and Newcastle to move on and or go to Europa League. Dortmund obviously went very downhill after losing Jude.
Will not stand for Newcastle.
Absolutely not. They're going to get throttled home and away every single place they go. There's no way.
Even against Dortmund?
Way.
Man,
I don't even Dortmund maybe, but we're talking about a ton of guys that have no minimal Champions League experience. Eddie Howe.
The league, they went to the Champions League the next year and made it all the way to the quarterfinals because they just basically said, "Fuck the league. We're only playing the Champions League." I don't know. It could be another situation. Leicester had negative amounts of experience.
All of these teams are in similar situations in their domestic leagues, and
that's kind of true.
And
that's a fair point.
Premier League is one of the best. So
that's a really fair point. I don't see it. I hope the Gordies have their fun, Geordies or whatever they are, have their fun in Milan because they look like they're having it. But I truly think they're going to get bounced. I think the Toon Army is going to get bounced a lot of places. But, I digress.
All right. Group G, Manchester City, RB Leipzig, Crvena Zvezda, Crvena
Zvezda,
Red Star, and the Young Boys.
Yeah.
This is one of those outlier groups. Then for me,
yeah,
Manchester City moving on very very easily. Leipzig finishing second and Young Boys going to Europa League. I know Young Boys are another one of those teams similar to Union Berlin that we just are all kind of rooting for and want to do well. But I think Leipzig are too strong. Manchester City for sure, but they should all wipe the Red Stars.
Terrifying place to also go play, to be fair.
I could imagine. Even just looking at their name, I could imagine that stadium's probably filled with flares and might eventually be too smoky to see the ball, which would be sick.
A graffitied concrete tunnel under the stadium to walk in. It's terrifying.
It's scary.
That's sick. All right, and then the last Group H, we have Barcelona, Porto, Shakhtar, and Antwerp. We had and we had it in that order. Barcelona finishing at the top of the group, I think pretty easily.
Yeah. João Felix getting a goal for them over the weekend.
They looked so good.
Yeah,
they looked so good this weekend against Betis, who is legit. They're not a rollover team, and they looked unreal.
Yeah, excited to watch them now that they kind of got their signings dialed in, and everybody's starting to play well together. They're going to be a fun team to watch too.
Yeah,
Porto finishing second, and Shakhtar going to Europa League again this year.
All right,
that concludes it. So,
yeah, that's the Mecca of Banter Champions League group picks. We'll have those obviously up on our social medias, so you guys can give us your feedback on how you guys think we did, and obviously we can check in throughout the Champions League season to see how we selected. I will say, boys, it does suck being a Chelsea fan and not having Champions League during the week. It's been a little bit since that's happened for me. So yeah, that stings a little bit. But yeah, that wraps it up for this episode of the Mecca of Banter podcast. As always, follow us on all of our social medias, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, you name it. You can find us on Spotify for all of our episodes. But yeah, cheers, lads. Appreciate it.
Cheers, fellas.
Cheers, boys.
Yeah, boys. I was
Gunners.
Ooh.